So these are some of the tips you can use to help you solve problems. The first and most important thing is to make sure that you thoroughly understand data structures and algorithms and their complexity. So at college, it at first doesn't make sense. It seems like you're just learning it by heart, but I suggest to actually spend some more time to understand what complexity analysis does. This is the same as big O calling something O of n or O of n square. And in the next slide, you'll see how that will help you in solving problems. So make sure you understand data structures and algorithms, and that will help you immensely in solving problems and in your career as a software engineer. And another thing to note is oftentimes you're not thinking about the edge cases, especially when you start competitive programming. So you'll think that your program works for a major number of cases, but for cases such as 0 or you give a -1, or usually the boundary conditions of an array, in such cases your program will fail. So in a judge, it's often hard to find out why your programming is failing. So if you think that you have the correct approach and you've read the question correctly and you think something is wrong, you'll have to make sure, double check that you have all the edge cases correct, that your array index is within the limit, and a number of such things. There are a lot of blogs that will tell you what all to check for in edge cases. And then the next suggestion is to practice a lot, and patience and persistence is key here, because at first, as you solve more and more harder problems, it you'll feel a lot like giving up, but only if you stay persistent and you solve, only then you'll be able to improve. So, and read the question again is very important, because personally, a number of times I've noticed that if I'm stuck and after I read the question a few times, I see that I've missed something and I can, that helps me solve the problem. And that is one tip, to make sure to read the question if you're stuck. And then if you're solving a problem, always make sure that you get the correct algorithm first, and only then you make sure that it's efficient. So you can have something that solves a problem in n square, but if you're sure that it's correct, it's possible that it passes within the runtime. So always make sure correctness is given priority, and only after that, if your program is efficient. And then only if after these two you think you still need a lot more tuning, only then you should look at some other things to improve the runtime. So I'll give you some suggestions on how we can improve runtime of your program. But main thing to note is that you also always have to make sure program algorithm is correct, and then that it's efficient, and only then that you're able to run it. So if you have something like going through a loop in the first example, like someone suggested here, you can do it in 2 passes. Complexity wise, that is the same. So even that will pass the solution. But even despite that, if you think it's slow, then you can optimize it further to reduce the runtime. And then the last advice is to, after a contest, always read the editorial. So editorial is what is published by the authors of the question. This is basically the solution of the problem. So usually there are multiple languages, and there's a detailed explanation is given along with the code to solve the problem. So it's very likely that you don't solve a lot of problems in your first few contests, but make sure to read the editorial once the contest ends. So these are some of the things that I've used myself to perform better in contests. One of the most important things you need to learn is the table on this right. You don't have to learn this by heart. You can look this up, but with time you'll have a clear idea of why this happens. So just by looking at the input size and constraints, you'll be able to, it'll give you an idea on what sort of algorithm is expected. For example, if you look at this example, right, binary search, you can see that n values less than 10 power 5, which if you check in this table, it says you can use something like n log n or O of n. And by looking at this, it will tell you that maybe there's a sort involved. So ideally, you won't have to do this just by reading the question. You should be able to get the correct answer, but this will give you a helpful hint saying what sort of complexity is expected. So if you have input size of like 5,000 or 500 or very small, usually you can go, you can solve it with n cube or n square. So to give you an idea of why this happens, it's based on the number of operations. So it's typically a computer can perform about, the ones that are used in most judges perform about slightly more than 10 power 6 operations in 1 second. And you can even extend it to 10 power 7 and then 10 power 8 in some cases. If that is the case, this is similar to doing one pass over an entire array. So that's why it's overfn or overfn login. If it's something like doing a for loop within a for loop, nested for loop, you can do a maximum of about 5,000 operations, maybe slightly more, and only then it will be able to complete within 1 second. Similarly with all these input sizes. So if you're stuck with the question, looking at the constraints will give you an idea of what sort of complexity is required. So sometimes when the constraints are very small, you don't even have to break your head of getting an efficient solution. You can just write a simple one that works and it will pass. So the other secret to reducing your runtime is to prefer using smaller data types. So usually what we do is we have templates where we specify long integer or floats or doubles. This is to ensure that the values that we read don't overflow, usually to verify correctness, to ensure correctness. But if you notice that if you can try doing this, if you use integer as compared to long integers and you run it over large values, you will see that the program which uses integer will run faster. This is intuitive as well because it doesn't have to process much. Intuitively, that is. Then another tip is to use fast IO. I suggest looking this up. A lot of times input output becomes the bottleneck of the program. So if you notice that there's a large amount of input and output involved, or generally it's good to just add it in your template. I'll explain what a template is soon. So fast IO basically, to give you an example, if you use cin and cout, it's actually much slower than using printf and scanf. So if you still prefer using cin and cout, you can use a function call to ensure that it's, because internally it uses a synchronization for the standard input and output. So you can use a function call to disable that synchronization, and that will give you much faster input and output. Another suggestion is to use type defs and macros. So I personally don't use this a lot, but an example of this is you can write entire functions and then use something of a shorthand, and you can, in your program, you can just call that shorthand. So this saves you a lot of time, but I've personally not used it as much. You can see other people's code. You can see that they use a lot of type defs and macros. Anyone has any question? Oh, just like this. Sorry. STL is faster. Did you mean runtime or? Yeah, by it's faster, I mean it saves you a lot of typing. And that you don't have to test it and you don't have to implement it, and it'll save you bugs. Yeah, but also in general, STL is faster because it will be optimized to perform much faster. It will take constraints into account like memory and processor speed a lot of the times, and a lot more effort is put into that than when compared to writing your own. So that way STL is generally better unless you know for a fact that you'll be saving. If you know internally how it works and you know for a fact that the code that you write to replace that is doing a lot less operations, then only then I'll suggest using your own implementation over STL. Yes, inline function is also a good use. It's very similar to using macros, but there are some advantages and disadvantages. But inline function is also a good idea. Cool. So when I say prepare your environment, so it's a good idea to be comfortable in the IDE and terminal that you use so that you can quickly move between the question and your environment and how you compile and run it. So the way I do it is, I used to do in contests is I have one window open for the question and another window I'll have a terminal and an IDE in a split screen, and I'll quickly alt tab between the browser and the IDE. And to speed up my compilation and to generate a template, I use scripts. So I've given the link to that in the resources slide, you can check. So a template is basically a boilerplate code. Like you can see that in every program you have these, right? Includes and main and return zero. Pretty much every program. So to save your time, you can just have that copied in some location. And once you're starting a new program, just paste it in your IDE and you can start working on the logic itself. So even this, I do it with a script. I usually just run the script and it generates a template for me. You can see that in the link. So that's a template. So mine is a pretty basic template, but that has worked for me well. You can look for other people's templates. You'll find a lot of templates people use, and they use lots of type diffs and macros. But I found mine to be simple and does the job. So, and in a lot of contests, right? So you will have to implement data structures. One of the ones that I've seen a lot is a segment tree, which can get pretty complex at times, and it takes a long time to implement. So what's a good idea is once you know that you've used something like a segment tree, you can just build a generic implementation of that and save it in some folder in your directory. And the next time you know that you have to use, you can quickly access that. And I suggest this over using someone else's code. You can always look up some example of a data structure and copy it, right? But you don't know exactly how it works or where it will trip. But if you have your own, it's a good idea because you completely understand what's happening. So over time, you'll start seeing that these are the things that I need the most, and you'll start saving it in your library. Yeah, and another important tip is to make sure to read other people's code. A lot of platforms make this available. Even in discussions and submissions, you can see that other people have posted their code. You get to learn a lot from reading other people's code, and you learn a few tricks as well. Yeah. So these are some things to help you get started. So this book in the first link, okay, before I go here, any questions about this? Anyone has any questions about this table, or if you're able to understand what library is, or something about your environment? Any questions? Cool. So this book in the first link is something I actually found very late, I think when I was in the final year or something, but I found this to be incredibly useful. It's got a lot of things, and it uh, sort of, it's extensive. It tells you for what type of problem, what type of approaches help you. And it has all the tips that I've told you as well. So this is a very useful book. It's free. I suggest you to download and go through this. You don't have to read it end to end. Just start reading and you'll know what to proceed with next. If you're getting started, I've seen that HackerRank has a very helpful practice section. It's very beginner friendly and it gives you points and badges and helps you with test cases. So HackerRank is a great place to start. So if you've already started, I highly recommend you to take part in the CodeChef long. What's good about the long challenge is that it gives you a lot of time to solve problems. You can take days to solve a problem and you'll still be ranked in the same level as someone who solved it before. So the only goal in a long challenge is to solve as many problems as you can. In this case, it'll be till 15th of this month. And there's the link to the scripts that I've mentioned. You can go through and make your own. So I mentioned at the start that I work as a site reliability engineer. If you're interested to know more about what that means and that as a career path, you can use this link. You can also ping me to get more details. Yeah, that's the end. You can ask any questions